Jake Miller walked into his office on Level 7 of the New Horizon Research Station at exactly 0800 hours, just like he did every morning for the past 2 years. He carried his coffee in one hand and his datapad in the other. The station hummed with its usual sounds of machines working and air moving through the vents. But something was different today. Jake stopped in the doorway and stared at his desk. 3 small furry creatures were curled up under it, sleeping. Their bodies were about the size of house cats, but they had 6 legs and long tails with fluffy ends. These were Kapari, one of the 12 alien species working on the station. Next to them, somehow folded into the corner space, was a tall figure made of what looked like living crystal. The Vorthak engineer's blue-tinted body rose and fell slowly as he breathed. Jake set down his coffee and datapad quietly. He had seen tired workers before, but this was something else. The Kapari were making soft chirping sounds in their sleep. The Vorthak's crystal body glowed with a dim, warm light that Jake had learned meant they were at peace. "Sir, we have a problem." Jake turned to see Security Chief Lisa Brooks standing in the hallway with 2 of her officers. Her face was stern and she held a scanner in her hand. "These 4 aliens were reported missing from their shifts in the Quantum Drive Bay," Lisa said, walking into the office. "The supervisors want to know where they are. We tracked their biosignatures to your office." Jake looked back at the sleeping aliens, then at Lisa. They needed rest. "Rest?" Lisa raised an eyebrow. "Sir, they're supposed to be working. The quantum drive needs maintenance every 6 hours, and these workers missed their shift." "Look at them, Lisa," Jake said, pointing to the sleeping figures. "When was the last time you saw a Kapari sleep? Or a Vorthak, for that matter?" Lisa looked confused. "I don't know. I assumed they slept in their quarters during off-duty hours. The Kapari need rest every 6 hours, Jake explained. Their bodies can't function without it. The Vorthak need to enter a crystal sleep state to recharge their energy. But the work schedule here runs 14-hour shifts with only 2 breaks. That's how it's always been done," Lisa said. "All the alien species agreed to this schedule when they joined the project." Jake knelt down next to his desk. One of the Kapari opened its large, dark eyes and looked at him. It made a soft trilling sound and stretched its 6 legs. "Hello, Pip," Jake said to the small alien. "Did you sleep well?" The Kapari called Pip sat up and chattered in its native language. Jake didn't understand the words, but he knew the tone meant gratitude. Pip's 2 companions woke up as well, stretching and making happy sounds. The Vorthak engineer slowly unfolded himself from the corner. His crystal body now glowed with a bright, healthy blue light. He stood almost 7 feet tall when fully extended. "Engineer Shard," Jake said, nodding to the crystal being. "How do you feel?" Shard's voice sounded like wind chimes when he spoke. "Much better, Manager Miller." The rest sleep was most needed. Crystal Self was growing dim from too much work time. Lisa looked back and forth between Jake and the aliens. "Sir, I don't understand. Why are you letting them sleep in your office? This is against regulations." "Sometimes regulations need to change," Jake said. He helped Pip climb onto his desk, where the small alien began grooming its fur. "These beings have been working nonstop for weeks. They're making mistakes because they're exhausted. Yesterday, Pip nearly caused a power surge in Section C because he fell asleep while working. The supervisors won't like this," Lisa warned. "The Threx commander especially. He believes that rest is for weak species." Jake stood up and faced Lisa directly. "The Threx commander can think what he wants. But I've been watching the work reports. Error rates have gone up 300% in the past month. We've had 6 minor accidents and 3 aliens are in the medical bay right now from exhaustion." Shard chimed in with his wind chime voice. "The human manager Miller speaks truth words. Crystal Self has seen many workers become sick from too much work time. Some Vorthak have crystal cracks from no rest. And the Kapari in Section B are falling asleep at their stations," Pip added in broken standard. "Very dangerous for ship safety." Lisa looked around the office, then back at Jake. "So what are you suggesting? That we let aliens sleep anywhere they want?" "I'm suggesting we start treating them like living beings instead of machines," Jake said. "Every species has different needs. The Kapari need 6 hours of work, then 2 hours of rest. The Vorthak need crystal sleep every 8 hours. The Saurians need heat rest when their body temperature drops." "But the project schedule?" Lisa started. "The project schedule was made by humans for humans," Jake interrupted. "We assumed all species could work like us. We were wrong." Pip finished grooming and jumped down to Jake's shoulder. The small alien weighed almost nothing and felt warm against Jake's neck. Manager Miller is good human, Pip chittered. Understands that tired workers make bad work. Shard moved toward the door, his crystal body making soft musical sounds with each step. Crystal Self must return to work duties now, but Crystal Self will remember human kindness. Wait, Jake said. What if I told you that you could have proper rest periods? That we could change the schedule to fit your needs? All three Kapari started chittering excitedly. Shard's body began glowing brighter. The supervisors would never allow it, Shard said. Alien leaders believe rest is waste of time. Let me worry about the supervisors, Jake said. Right now, I want you all to go back to your stations. But if you need rest again, come back here. My office is always open. Lisa stepped forward. Sir, I have to report this to Captain Harrison. I know, Jake said. Tell him I'll be in his office in 1 hour to explain everything. The aliens left Jake's office looking much better than when he had found them. Pip gave Jake a small chirp of thanks before scurrying away. Shard's crystal body hummed with energy as he walked down the hallway. Lisa remained in the doorway. Jake, you're going to get in trouble for this. The alien supervisors won't understand. Maybe, Jake said, sitting down at his desk. But those 4 workers just got the first real rest they've had in weeks. They'll go back to their jobs and do better work because of it. How can you be so sure? Jake picked up his datapad and showed Lisa the screen. Because I've been tracking their performance. Every time an alien gets proper rest, their work quality goes up. Every time they're forced to work while exhausted, mistakes happen. Lisa looked at the data, her expression changing. You've been studying this? For months, Jake said. I've been trying to figure out why we're having so many problems. The answer isn't harder work. It's smarter work. And you think the solution is letting aliens sleep under your desk? Jake laughed. No, Lisa. The solution is understanding that not every species is built the same way. What works for humans doesn't work for everyone. Lisa left, shaking her head. Jake knew she would report everything to Captain Harrison. He also knew that the alien supervisors would be angry. But he had seen the difference proper rest made. Pip, Shard, and the other Kapari had been alert and energetic when they left. They would do good work today. Jake looked at the space under his desk where the aliens had been sleeping. He made a mental note to put some cushions there. If more aliens needed rest, he wanted them to be comfortable. The coffee on his desk had gone cold, but Jake didn't mind. He had more important things to think about, like how to convince a station full of aliens that sometimes the best way to work harder was to rest better. Outside his window, the stars shone against the black of space. New Horizon was humanity's first joint project with alien species. Jake hoped it wouldn't be the last. But that would depend on whether they could learn to work together properly, starting with something as simple as a good night's sleep. Captain Roy Harrison sat behind his large desk on the command level of New Horizon Station. His office had windows that showed the vast starfield outside, but today he was focused on the beings seated around his conference table. Jake Miller sat to his right, looking calm despite the angry voices filling the room. This is completely unacceptable, buzzed Commander Ziektal, the Threx department head. His insect-like body stood 4 feet tall with 4 arms that moved constantly as he spoke. His compound eyes glittered with anger. Human weakness is spreading to our workers like a disease. The Nebulari agree with the Threx, said Wisp Psi 7, a cloud of glowing gas contained in a clear suit shaped like a person. We energy beings do not require rest. This human concept of sleep time is inefficient. Jake watched the alien supervisors argue. Besides Ziektal and Wisp Psi 7, there were representatives from 8 other species. All of them seemed upset about what had happened in his office that morning. Let me understand this correctly, Captain Harrison said, holding up his hand for quiet. You're all angry because some tired workers took a nap? It is more than that, said Scalekeeper of Traditions, the Saurian supervisor. Her lizard-like body was covered in green and gold scales that caught the light. The human Miller is teaching our workers to be lazy. Saurians have worked for 20-hour periods without rest for thousands of years. And look how well that's working out, Jake said quietly. All eyes turned to him. Captain Harrison nodded for him to continue. Jake stood up and activated the wall display. Numbers and charts appeared showing work performance data from the past 3 months. Error rates are up 340% since we started the project, Jake said, pointing to a red line that climbed steeply across the chart. Minor accidents have increased 200%. 3 alien crew members are currently in medical bay for exhaustion-related problems. Coincidence? Ziegtal buzzed. The work is simply becoming more difficult. Is it? Jake switched to another chart. This shows error patterns by species and shift time. Look at hour 14 of each shift. Kapari mistakes increase by 500%. Vorthak crystal cracks happen 90% more often. Even Threx workers start making errors after 18 hours of continuous work. Commander Ziegtal's forearms crossed over his chest. Threx workers do not make errors. We are bred for perfection. Jake pulled up another screen. Yesterday, Threx worker designation ZX47 installed a gravity plate upside down in Section D. Last week, Threx team leader KT-12 connected power cables backwards, causing a 3-hour blackout in the science labs. The room went quiet. Captain Harrison leaned forward. Is this true, Commander? Ziegtal's wings buzzed with agitation. Those were unusual circumstances. No, Jake said. Those were exhausted workers making preventable mistakes. Every species in this room is pushing their people beyond safe limits. Safe limits are for weak species, said Wisp Psi-7. The Nebulari conquered 12 star systems without rest periods. How many Nebulari died in those conquests? Jake asked. The gas cloud flickered. That information is not relevant to this discussion. Jake looked around the table. Every species here is proud of their work ethic. The Threx can work for 20 hours straight. The Saurians can labor through temperature extremes. The Vorthak can function for days without crystal sleep. But pride is killing your people. You speak of things you do not understand, Scalekeeper said. Humans are a young species. You have not learned the discipline required for great achievements. Maybe not, Jake agreed. But we've learned something else. We've learned that workers who are well rested make fewer mistakes, solve problems better, and stay healthy longer. Captain Harrison studied the charts on the wall. These numbers are concerning. But what exactly are you proposing, Jake? I want to implement flexible work schedules based on each species' biological needs, Jake said. Kipari work 6 hours, rest 2 hours, repeat. Vorthak work 8 hours, crystal sleep 4 hours. Saurians work 12 hours, heat rest 6 hours. The alien supervisors erupted in angry sounds. Ziegtal's wings buzzed so loudly that Captain Harrison had to call for order. This is madness, Ziegtal said. Work schedules would become impossible to coordinate. Different species working different hours? Chaos. Actually, Jake said, it would be more efficient. Right now you have Kapari workers falling asleep at their stations. You have Vorthak engineers with crystal cracks affecting their judgment. You have Saurians moving slowly because their body temperature is too low. Give them proper rest and they'll work better during their active hours. The human speaks nonsense, said Wisp Psi-7. Productivity comes from maximum work time, not rest time. Jake switched to a new chart. I've been tracking the 4 workers who rested in my office this morning. Look at their performance from the past 6 hours. The chart showed dramatic improvements. Error rates dropped to nearly 0. Work speed increased. Problem-solving efficiency went up by 40%. Impossible, said Scalekeeper. One rest period cannot cause such changes. It can, Jake said. Because those 4 workers got the first real rest they've had in weeks. Their bodies and minds recovered. They went back to work alert and focused. Captain Harrison stood up and walked to the window. Outside, work pods moved back and forth between the station sections carrying supplies and equipment. How long would it take to implement this new schedule? 2 weeks for a trial period, Jake said. I've already worked out the details. We can maintain full coverage of all departments while giving every species their needed rest periods. Absolutely not, Ziegtal said. The Threx will not participate in this experiment. We will continue working as we always have. That's your choice, Jake said. But I'm offering this program to any alien who wants it. No one will be forced to participate. You're dividing our workforce, Scalekeeper accused. Creating factions. I'm giving people options, Jake replied. Something your species seem to have forgotten how to do. Wisp Psi-7's gas cloud swirled angrily. The Nebulari will not allow our workers to be corrupted by human weakness. Fine, Captain Harrison said, turning back to the group. Here's what we'll do. Jake, you have 2 weeks to prove your theory. Any alien worker who wants to try your rest schedule can sign up. The supervisors can keep their current workers on the old system. After 2 weeks, we'll compare the results. This is a waste of time, Ziegtal buzzed. But the Threx are confident our workers will outperform any lazy humans and their followers. We shall see, said Scalekeeper. The Saurians have never been defeated by a softer species. Jake gathered his datapad. I'll set up a sign-up station in the main corridor. Any alien who wants to try the new schedule can register there. As the meeting ended, the alien supervisors filed out, still muttering complaints. Captain Harrison stayed behind with Jake. You know, this could backfire, the captain said. If your system doesn't work, it could damage human relations with all these species. I know, Jake said. But if we don't try something different, we're going to have more accidents. Someone's going to get seriously hurt or killed from exhaustion. 2 weeks, Captain Harrison repeated. Make it count. Jake left the captain's office and headed for the main corridor. He had work to do. In 2 weeks, he would either prove that human ideas about work and rest could help alien species, or he would confirm what the supervisors believed, that humans were too soft for the serious business of space exploration. Either way, Jake was determined to give every tired alien worker on the station a chance to sleep under his desk if they needed it. Sometimes the simplest acts of kindness were the most revolutionary. Jake Miller stood in the empty storage bay on level 5, looking at the space he was about to transform. Tech specialist Amy Parker stood beside him, holding a data pad and making notes. The bay was large enough to hold 50 people comfortably with good air circulation and adjustable lighting. This could work, Amy said, checking her measurements. The environmental controls are separate from the main systems, so we can adjust temperature and humidity for different species. Jake nodded. We'll need different sections. The Saurians need heat lamps and warm surfaces. The Kapari like soft materials for nesting. The Vorthak need spaces where they can fully extend their crystal bodies. What about the Nebulari? Amy asked. Do energy beings even need rest spaces? Wisp Size 7 says they don't need rest, Jake replied. But I've noticed some of the younger Nebulari flickering during long shifts. They might benefit from energy recharge stations. Over the next 3 days, Jake and Amy worked to set up the rest zone. They installed heat lamps and smooth stone platforms for the Saurians. Soft cushions and enclosed nooks went in for the Kapari. Crystal charging stations were built for the Vorthak, with special mineral baths that helped their bodies regenerate. Word spread quickly through the station. Some aliens were curious about the human rest zone. Others were suspicious or afraid their supervisors would be angry if they were caught using it. The first visitor was Pip, the Kapari who had slept under Jake's desk. The small alien scurried into the rest zone and immediately curled up in one of the soft nooks. Within minutes, Pip was asleep, making happy, chirping sounds. It's working, Amy said, watching Pip sleep. Look at the bio readings. Pip's stress levels are dropping to normal for the first time in weeks. More aliens began to visit. Shard, the Vorthak engineer, spent 2 hours in the crystal charging station and emerged with his body glowing brighter than Jake had ever seen. A young Saurian named Hotstone Undersun took advantage of the heat lamps and fell into a deep, restful sleep. By the end of the first week, 23 aliens were using the rest zone regularly. Jake tracked their performance carefully, and the results were impressive. Error rates among resting workers dropped by 60%. Work speed increased by 30%. Most importantly, there were no accidents in departments where workers were getting proper rest, but not everyone was happy about the changes. This is getting out of hand, Security Chief Lisa Brooks told Jake as they stood outside the rest zone. I've had 3 supervisors complain about workers being away from their stations. Are the workers completing their assigned tasks? Jake asked. Yes, but are they making fewer mistakes? Lisa checked her datapad. Actually, yes. Significantly fewer. Then what's the problem? Lisa pointed through the observation window. Inside the rest zone, 6 aliens from 4 different species were resting peacefully. The problem is that this looks wrong to the supervisors. They see workers sleeping and think laziness, not efficiency. Jake understood the concern. The alien work cultures had been built on constant activity for thousands of years. Seeing workers rest during duty hours went against everything they believed. The real test came during the 2nd week. A Threx worker named Buzz Quickflight approached Jake privately in the corridor. Human manager Miller, Buzz said, his insect voice quiet so others wouldn't hear. Buzz Quickflight has question about rest zone. What kind of question? Jake asked. Is rest zone only for weak species? Or can strong Threx use also? Jake looked at the young Threx worker. Buzz was smaller than the other Threx and his wings moved more slowly than they should. Signs of exhaustion that Jake had learned to recognize. The rest zone is for any being who needs it, Jake said. But won't Commander Zichtal be angry if he finds out? Buzz's compound eyes looked around nervously. Commander Zichtal says Threx never tire. But Buzz Quickflight is very tired, making mistakes at work, afraid of causing accidents. Come with me, Jake said. He led Buzz to the rest zone and showed him a quiet corner with adjustable lighting and soft surfaces. Try resting here for 1 hour. If Commander Zichtal asks where you were, tell him you were running an errand for me. Buzz settled onto the soft surface with obvious relief. His wings stopped their constant buzzing and his breathing slowed. Within minutes, he was asleep. Amy monitored Buzz's vital signs while he rested. His stress hormones are off the charts, she told Jake. This worker has been running on empty for days. When Buzz woke up, he looked completely different. His wings buzzed with energy and his compound eyes were bright and alert. Buzz Quickflight feels much better, he said. How is this possible? Rest is how your body repairs itself, Jake explained. Even Threx bodies need time to recover from hard work. Buzz returned to his duties and his work performance improved dramatically. But word got back to Commander Zichtal within hours. You will cease this contamination immediately. Zichtal buzzed angrily when he confronted Jake in the corridor. Threx workers do not require human coddling. Buzz made 0 errors after his rest period, Jake said. Before that, he was averaging 3 mistakes per shift. Irrelevant, Zichtal snapped. The Threx way is the only way for Threx workers. Even if the Threx way is killing them? Zichtal's forearms crossed over his chest. Better to die working than live resting. Jake stared at the Threx commander. Is that really what you believe? That work is more important than life. Work gives life meaning, Zichtal replied. Without constant labor, existence is pointless. What about joy? Jake asked. What about health? What about having energy to spend time with family and friends? Zichtal's wings buzzed with confusion. These concepts are foreign to Threx thinking. Jake realized he was seeing the core of the problem. These alien species had built their entire cultures around work. They had forgotten that work was supposed to serve life, not the other way around. Commander, Jake said, what happens to Threx workers when they get too old to maintain their work pace? They are retired to rest colonies, Zichtal answered. And how long do they live after retirement? Zichtal was quiet for a moment. Not long. Most die within 1 year of stopping work. Don't you see the problem with that? Jake asked. Your workers are so burned out by the time they retire that their bodies can't recover. They've used up all their energy and have nothing left. This is the Threx way, Zichtal said, but his voice was less certain than before. Jake decided to take a risk. What if I could show you a different way? A way that would make Threx workers more productive, not less? Impossible. Give me 1 week, Jake said. Let me work with 5 Threx volunteers. If their performance doesn't improve, I'll stop trying to change your minds about rest. Zichtal considered this. And if you fail? Then you can report to the Galactic Council that human work methods are inferior to Threx methods. The commander's wings buzzed with interest. The Threx were competitive by nature, and the chance to prove their superiority was tempting. 5 volunteers, Zichtal agreed. 1 week. But when you fail, the human rest program will be shut down permanently. Jake shook the commander's hand, feeling the hard exoskeleton against his skin. He had just made a deal that could determine the future of human-alien cooperation. That night, Jake sat in his office, planning how to help 5 Threx workers learn to rest without losing their cultural pride. Outside his window, the stars reminded him how far humanity had come to reach this point. Everything they had worked for could succeed or fail based on whether he could teach insects to take a nap. The alarm sounded at 0300 hours, waking everyone on New Horizon Station. Jake Miller ran from his quarters to the control center, where Captain Harrison was coordinating the emergency response. What's the situation? Jake asked, still pulling on his uniform jacket. Quantum communication array is failing, Captain Harrison said grimly. We're losing the connection to Earth and all our research data. If we can't fix it within 48 hours, 3 months of work will be lost forever. Jake looked at the main display screen, which showed the massive array outside the station. Red warning lights flashed across its surface, and several sections were already dark. What caused it? Jake asked. System overload in the primary relay, reported Chief Engineer Collins. The backup systems are failing one by one. We need every department working together to rebuild the damaged sections before the cascade failure reaches the core. Jake's stomach dropped. This was the worst possible timing. For the past week, he had been working with 5 Threx volunteers in his rest program, trying to prove that proper rest could improve their work performance. The test was scheduled to end in 2 days. Now, with the station's most critical system failing, everyone would be expected to work around the clock until the repairs were complete. The exhausted workers who hadn't been using the rest program would be pushed even harder, and Jake's volunteers would face pressure to abandon their rest schedules and work continuously like traditional Threx. All department heads to the emergency briefing room, Captain Harrison announced over the comm system. "This is a station-wide priority alert." Jake hurried to the briefing room where the alien supervisors were already gathering. Commander Ziktal looked directly at him with what Jake could only interpret as satisfaction. "Now we will see the true value of work versus rest," Ziktal buzzed. "In crisis, only constant effort can save us." The briefing was quick and urgent. Every department would need to contribute workers and expertise. The quantum array had 17 major sections, each requiring different specialists to repair. Time was running out. "All workers will remain on duty until the repairs are complete," announced Captain Harrison. "No breaks, no rest periods, no exceptions." Jake raised his hand. "Captain, what about the workers who are already exhausted? They'll make more mistakes if they're pushed harder." "We don't have a choice," Captain Harrison replied. "It's all hands on deck." The supervisors split up to organize their teams. Jake watched the Threx volunteers. Buzz Quick Flight, Wing Steady Strong, Click Fast Mind, Hum Low Deep, and Sharp Eye Bright, gathering with the other Threx workers. They looked conflicted, torn between their new rest habits and their loyalty to their species. Commander Ziktal addressed his workers in the Threx language, his wings buzzing with authority. Jake didn't understand the words, but he could see the effect. The 5 volunteers looked down at the floor, shame obvious in their posture. "They've been told they're betraying their people," Amy Parker said quietly, standing next to Jake. "The other Threx are calling them weak." "Can you monitor work performance during the crisis?" Jake asked. "I want to track error rates and efficiency." "Already on it," Amy said, holding up her datapad. "But Jake, if your rest program causes problems during this emergency, it'll be shut down permanently." Jake knew she was right. He watched as work teams spread out across the station, heading for different sections of the quantum array. The Threx workers moved with their typical rapid efficiency, but Jake could see signs of fatigue in many of them. Their movements were slightly slower, their coordination less precise. The first 12 hours of the crisis went badly. Section after section of the array continued to fail. Work teams made progress on repairs, only to have new problems appear elsewhere. Jake tracked the reports and saw a pattern. Most of the failures were caused by installation errors and miscalibrated equipment. "Error rate is climbing," Amy reported to Jake as they stood in the observation deck watching the repair work. Threx Team 7 installed a power coupling backwards. Saurian Team 3 used the wrong crystalline matrix in Section 9. Even the Vorthak are making mistakes. Jake wasn't surprised. The workers had been pushing themselves hard before the crisis. Now they were being asked to work without any rest at all. But one group was performing differently. The aliens who had been using Jake's rest program were making fewer errors and working more efficiently. Even under crisis conditions, their rested minds were functioning better than their exhausted colleagues. "Look at this," Amy said, showing Jake her datapad. "The Kapari who've been using the rest zone have 0 errors so far. The Vorthak rest users are working 30% faster than the non-rest group. What about the Threx volunteers?" Jake asked. Amy checked another screen. "That's the interesting part. Even though they're not allowed to rest now, they're still performing better than the other Threx. The rest they got over the past week is still helping them." At hour 18 of the crisis, disaster struck. A Threx worker in Section 12 fell asleep while installing a critical component and caused a major power surge. The feedback damaged 3 other sections and injured 2 Saurian engineers. Commander Ziktal was furious. How could this happen? Threx workers do not fall asleep on duty. Jake checked the incident report. The worker was ZX-47, the same Threx who had made errors before the crisis began. He had been working for 19 straight hours without rest. "Commander, your worker was exhausted," Jake said. "Anyone would fall asleep after 19 hours of continuous work." "Weak excuse," Ziktal buzzed angrily. "Strong Threx can work for days without rest." "No, they can't," Jake said firmly. And that attitude just cost us 3 sections of the array and put 2 beings in the medical bay. Captain Harrison called an emergency meeting. The supervisors gathered in the briefing room looking stressed and tired themselves. "We're losing ground," Captain Harrison said. "At this rate, we'll never fix the array in time." "What's causing all these errors?" Jake stood up. "Exhaustion. The workers are too tired to think clearly." "Impossible," said Scalekeeper of Traditions. "Saurians have worked through worse conditions, have they?" Jake activated the wall display and showed the error tracking data. "Look at these numbers. Error rates increase dramatically after 12 hours of continuous work. They get worse every hour after that." The supervisors studied the charts. Even Commander Zichtal looked concerned. "But some teams are performing much better," Captain Harrison observed, pointing to a section of the chart. "These groups have error rates close to 0. Those are the workers who've been using the REST program," Jake explained. "Even under crisis conditions, they're thinking more clearly because their minds aren't completely exhausted." "Coincidence," Wisp Psi 7 said, but the energy being's voice lacked conviction. Jake switched to a new display. "Here's what I propose. Give the exhausted workers 4-hour rest periods in rotation. Keep the critical work going, but let people sleep." "We don't have time for rest," Scalekeeper protested. "We don't have time for more mistakes," Jake countered. "Every error sets us back hours. CX-47's accident just cost us 6 hours of work." Captain Harrison looked at the data, then at the supervisors. "Commander Zichtal, what's your assessment?" Zichtal was quiet for a long moment. Jake could see the commander struggling with the evidence in front of him. "The Threx way has always been constant work," Zichtal said slowly. "But the numbers do not lie. Tired workers make mistakes." "Then we tried Jake's rotation system," Captain Harrison decided. 4 hours work, 4 hours rest, continuous coverage. "The nebulary object to this plan," Wisp Psi 7 said. "Rest periods show weakness." "The nebulary can continue working without rest if they choose," Captain Harrison replied. "But everyone else will follow the rotation schedule." As the meeting ended, Jake felt a mixture of hope and fear. He had won approval for his rest system during the crisis, but if it didn't work, it would be the end of everything he had tried to build. The real test was just beginning. 6 months later, Jake Miller stood in his new office aboard the diplomatic vessel Harmony, watching through the viewport as they approached the massive Galactic Council station. Thousands of ships from dozens of species surrounded the structure. "All here for the first Interspecies Workplace Wellness Summit." Security Chief Lisa Brooks, now his deputy director, entered the office carrying a stack of data pads. "The final attendance numbers are in," she said. 47 species have sent representatives. Even the Hegemony Alliance wants to hear about our wellness protocols. Jake smiled, remembering how different things had been during the quantum array crisis. The rotation rest system had worked beyond anyone's expectations. Well-rested workers had fixed the array with 6 hours to spare, and error rates had dropped to practically 0. More importantly, nobody else had been hurt. "Any word from Commander Zichtal?" Jake asked. "He's already aboard the station," Lisa replied, "leading the Threx delegation. Apparently he's become quite the advocate for structured rest periods." Jake laughed. The transformation of the Threx commander had been the most surprising outcome of the crisis. When Zichtal saw his rested workers outperforming the exhausted ones, he had completely changed his views on the value of rest. "Manager Miller," came a familiar chiming voice from the doorway. Engineer Shard entered, his crystal body glowing with bright blue light. "Crystal Self brings greetings from the Vorthak Council. They wish to thank Human Friend for sharing wisdom of rest healing." "How are things on the Vorthak homeworld?" Jake asked. "Much improved," Shard replied. "Productivity increased 400% since implementing crystal sleep schedules. Fewer workers suffer crystal cracks. Vorthak society is learning to value rest time as much as work time." A small chittering sound came from under Jake's desk. Lisa peered down and smiled. "Let me guess, they needed a break?" Jake looked under his desk to see 3 Kapari curled up asleep, along with a young Saurian and what appeared to be a gaseous being in a portable containment suit. "That's Whisper Soft Wind," Jake explained, pointing to the gas cloud, one of the younger nebulari. "Turns out energy beings do need rest. Their elders just forgot because they'd been working nonstop for centuries." Lisa shook her head with amusement. "Some things never change." "Actually, everything has changed," Jake said, standing up and looking out at the gathered ships. When we started this, most species thought rest was a sign of weakness. Now they're coming here to learn how to implement wellness programs in their own societies. Dr. Helen Foster entered the office carrying a medical scanner. Sorry to interrupt, but I need to check on our sleeping friends. The Kapari have been particularly stressed about the summit. She knelt down and scanned the sleeping aliens. All readings normal. They should wake up refreshed in about an hour. Perfect timing, Jake said. The opening ceremony starts in 2 hours. As Dr. Foster left, Captain Harrison's voice came over the comm system. All senior staff to the conference center. Time to make history. Jake, Lisa, and Shard made their way through the Harmony's corridors to the main conference room. The walls displayed feeds from ships throughout the fleet, hundreds of species preparing for the summit. Captain Harrison stood at the head of the table with Admiral Chen, the new head of interspecies relations. Around the table sat representatives from the original New Horizon project, including some familiar faces. Before we begin the summit, Admiral Chen said, I want to review how far we've come. Jake, would you share the latest statistics? Jake activated the main display. Charts and graphs filled the screen, showing productivity increases across dozens of worlds in space. Stations, productivity in human alien. Collaborative projects has increased an average 400% since implementing wellness protocols, Jake reported. More importantly, workplace injuries have decreased by 90%, and psychological health scores have improved across all participating species. Remarkable, said Amy Parker, who had been promoted to Director of Workplace Analytics. We're seeing innovations and discoveries that wouldn't have been possible under the old systems. Rested minds are creative minds. Commander Zichtal joined the meeting by video link from his ship. The Threx commander looked healthier than Jake had ever seen him, his compound eyes bright and his wings moving with relaxed energy. The Threx Collective wishes to formally thank Human Manager Miller, Zichtal said. Average Threx lifespan has increased by 30% since adopting rest cycles. Our workers are happier, more creative, and more productive. We were wrong to value constant work over intelligent work. What about resistance from traditional factions? Admiral Chen asked. There is still some, Zichtal admitted, but results speak louder than tradition. When the rest-using colonies outperform the traditional colonies by such large margins, even the most stubborn leaders must listen. Scalekeeper of Traditions appeared on another screen. The Saurian supervisor had also changed dramatically. Her scales now bright and healthy, instead of the dull color they had been during the crisis. The Saurian Republic has implemented planetary rest schedules, she reported. Heat rest periods are now mandatory for all workers. Industrial accidents have virtually disappeared, and our manufacturing output has increased beyond all projections. Jake looked around the table at the faces of beings who had once thought rest was weakness. Now they were leading a galactic movement toward better working conditions. The summit agenda is packed, Admiral Chen said. 68 different topics, from species-specific rest requirements to interplanetary workplace safety standards. Jake, you'll be giving the keynote address tomorrow. What's your message going to be? Captain Harrison asked. Jake thought for a moment, remembering that first morning when he had found 4 exhausted aliens sleeping under his desk. That the strongest thing any being can do is admit when they need help, Jake said. Whether that help is a place to rest, a listening ear, or just someone who cares enough to ask how they're doing. As the meeting ended, Jake returned to his office to prepare for the summit. The 3 Kapari were awake now, grooming themselves and chattering happily. The young Saurian was stretching in a patch of warm light, and Whisper Softwind was swirling contentedly in her containment suit. Manager Miller, Pip said, climbing onto Jake's desk. Pip has question. What's that, Pip? Why did humans learn about rest when other species did not? Jake considered the question. I think it's because humans learned early that we're not the strongest or fastest or smartest species. We had to find other ways to survive. We learned that taking care of each other was more important than trying to be perfect. And now humans teach this to Galaxy? Asked the young Saurian, her voice sleepy and content. Now we all teach it to each other, Jake corrected. Humans just happened to figure it out first. Whisper Softwind's voice came through her suit's speakers, soft and musical. Nebulari are grateful for human wisdom. Energy beings had forgotten how to rest. Now young Nebulari are brighter and more creative than elders. Jake looked out the viewport at the massive station ahead. Tomorrow, representatives from dozens of worlds would gather to discuss how to make work better for everyone. It was a far cry from that morning when he had simply wanted to let some tired workers get some sleep. Rest time now? Hip asked hopefully. Jake laughed and gestured to the soft cushions under his desk. Rest time for everyone. As his alien friends settled down for another nap, Jake reflected on how much had changed. The galaxy was learning that strength didn't come from working until you collapsed. It came from knowing when to rest, when to ask for help, and when to put the well-being of others before the demands of productivity. Outside his window, the lights of 1,000 ships twinkled like stars. Each one carried beings who were learning to balance work with rest, efficiency with compassion, and achievement with happiness. It had all started with a simple question: why are they under your desk? And an even simpler answer: they needed a break. So do you. Tomorrow, Jake would stand before the assembled representatives of the galaxy and share that message with everyone. But tonight he was content to sit in his office, listening to the peaceful sounds of well-rested beings sleeping safely under his desk. Some things, Jake thought, never needed to change.